That face is pretty much how I feel. Not really, but I don't know. It was so weird. So, uh, got high for the first time yesterday. Been something I've been wanting to do for a while, just kind of like break down that barrier. I've spoken about in multiple videos at this point. I just, kept putting it off, putting it off. I was waiting till I felt good because I wanted to, experience it fully. Because I'm like, I'm probably just gonna do it once in my life. So let's just make sure that I feel good, that I'm not distracted by anything else, so I can experience this fully once and then move on. But after having that dream yesterday about my wife and, realizing how difficult and intense it's been for her, um, one of the things that came from that was the fact that it's like I need to do everything that I can in order to survive, to live, because it's unfair for her if I die. Now, that doesn't mean trying to regain control and everything. Like, at the end of the day, it's still not in my power to decide what happens or what doesn't happen. It's up to God, and I trust whatever's going to end up happening, and I'm okay with that. But when it comes to like everyday stuff, I need to do my part. I need to do what I can to stay as healthy as I can to give God that time to do what he needs to do, whatever that is. So part of that was like, all right, I've been having a lot of issues when it comes to eating. It's always a struggle. It's been worse for the last couple months, for the last few weeks. So I'm like, you know what? A lot of people have found that weed helps them, the munchies and everything. So I'm like, let's give it a try. So I decided yesterday, let's try the gummies that my friend bought for me a while back. And, when he brought it to me, he tried one just to test out how strong they are. And he's like, yeah, okay, they're not that strong. You can start with one, or, if you really want to feel the full effect, you can go ahead and take two. So that's what I initially planned when my plan was just to get high once and kind of like try it out, experiment it, break down that barrier that I set up inside myself, and just move on. That was the plan. So I'm like, okay, I was gonna take two, but now since the strategy was, I don't care about getting high. If this can help boost my appetite, I desperately need that. And as I mentioned, I'm gonna do whatever it takes so I don't die because my wife does not deserve to go through that. So I'm like, let's just start out with one. So what happened? Because the night before I didn't sleep that well because I had that dream about my wife, and then in the morning, there was a lot of processing and everything. Like the full details are in the last video. Um, but not the best night. So I spent a lot of the morning, well, pretty much the entire morning in bed. And by the time, I had breakfast, which pretty much was just a smoothie with like protein smoothie. I also had a tea and I had my pills. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have my breakfast, then I'm gonna take the weed gummy, and while I wait for it to take effect, I'm gonna have time to go ahead and, make a meal, kind of like small lunch, since it was getting late in the day at that point. I think it was like around 1 o'clock, something like that. So that was kind of the plan. Unfortunately, it hit me way faster than I was expecting. I don't know exactly how long, maybe like 10, 15 minutes, like within that range. And I was texting with my wife at the time, and I just started feeling the effects. And I was like, okay, it's definitely starting to hit me. Like the way that it felt in the beginning was kind of like a hard time focusing. If you've ever come, like, let's say you don't eat enough and then you go out and you feel like lightheaded and your vision kind of goes blurry and you feel like, okay, like I might pass out. It was that sensation of like, my vision wasn't quite blurry, but just that sensation of like lightheadedness and like hard time focusing and feeling very distracted, and like time was kind of like distorted. That's what it felt like. So I was texting with my wife and I'm like trying to just, focus and responding, and it's like my brain was just not working. It was just like so slow and confused, and I was like trying to write, and it was just taking forever, and it felt like such a mental strain just to have to text that I'm like, okay, sorry, like I I can't text for a while, like it just hit me. I need to, just experience this because I can't handle multiple stuff at once. So stopped texting with my wife, sat there for a while, and it's like I went through a few different phases. There was like, numbness and tingling like that went through my different areas of my body. That same sensation of like I feel like I'm gonna pass out, but I don't get to the point where I pass out. It's just like I'm stuck in that in between phase of feeling normal and like passing out, and where you're like, lightheaded and you have a hard time focusing. Your vision kind of goes a little blurry, and that was the start of it. So I'm like, okay, this isn't so bad. And at the same time, there's like this kind of like disconnect of like my brain doesn't work. I can't really focus or think properly. So it's like I'm like, okay, I guess that's what people mean when they describe like, they disconnect from the world. So I'm like, okay, it's not that bad. But then within like the first 10 minutes, it just starts getting more and more intense, and I quickly realize like, okay, there's no way I can go through this just sitting on the couch. I need to go to bed. So go to bed, lie down. Well, mostly, seated. So half seated, half lying down. And after a while, it's like my eyelids are so heavy, I can't even keep them like open. So I just close my eyes, and that's when things get really freaking weird. Like, it's like my body's like, okay, you close your eyes so you no longer see the world. Instead, you're gonna sense it. So it's like just the sensation of touch and like feeling made me feel like I could visually see the world around me. And it's hard to explain, but it's like I would close my eyes and I would feel all the world around me, and it's like I could see it in my mind's eye, but instead of being normal, it's like, those artworks, it's just like a bunch of dots. It was kind of like that. And then there would be like, shapes that would kind of appear and morph and transform and become something else. And everything kind of like, when you look at clouds and they change shape, and it's like, oh, it looks like this and now it looks like that. It was kind of like that, but more intense and more vivid. So it's like I was kind of like having sensory hallucination of like, just everything I touched. It's like, let's say I scratch myself. It's like normally it's like, oh, you scratch yourself, okay, the itch goes away. It's like, no, I scratch myself, and it's like I feel like intense like heat for like what feels like a couple minutes, and I'm just like, okay, that's weird. Or like, let's say something like itches, or there's like a little pain, instead of just like being a slight itchiness or a slight pain that goes away after a second, it like the sensation repeats over and over and over again, getting more and more and more intense. And it's like in order for that intensity to go away, I need to like completely distract myself. So I need to be like, okay, I need to force myself to open my eyes, and that'll kind of like, okay, distract me, and it goes away. And it's like I can sense like areas of my body like tingling really intense, and it's like sometimes I feel like really intense heat in my entire body, and then like, oh, it's too hot, so I like take off a tiny bit of the covers, and then suddenly it's like I'm freezing. It's like everything is incredibly heightened, like 10 times, sometimes like 100 times more intense than normal, and I'm just basically like freaking the fuck out. Because I'm like, okay, from everything that everyone that I've known who's done weed before has described, this is not normal. That's not how they describe it. How I've always heard it described is, hey, you get kind of tired, you kind of disconnect, just stop thinking, and you're just kind of like, just really relaxed. And for me, it was the opposite. It felt like I was having a panic attack, but everything was happening in slow motion. And it seemed to last forever. Like the effect where I was really feeling it lasted about 3 hours. It felt like 3 days. And it was horrible. It's like, oh, you feel like a tingling? It's gonna be like an intense tingling sensation in your entire body. Like there's like a million ants like in your body, and it's like really intense. And it just like every little detail was just so intense, so overwhelming. I'm just like, I cannot freaking deal with this. And the thing is, like, I don't know why it was that intense for me. Maybe the fact that I didn't eat that much before, taking the gummies. Maybe the fact that I'm just so skinny that, I don't have a high tolerance, so it just hit me so much harder than everyone else. Maybe the fact that it's like I've never taken drugs before. Maybe a combination of all those things. I really don't know. But it hit me so hard, and I just hated the experience. My friend, like, because I've been putting it off for a while, he was like, dude, you're making too much of a big deal out of this. It's really not a big deal. Just take it. You'll probably end up being disappointed. Like, stop putting it off, stop building it up. It's like, no. If anything, I did not build it up enough. This was like way more fucking intense than I was expecting. And even now, like the day after, I still don't understand why it was that intense. And I can still feel it. Like the main effects lasted 3 hours. Since then, I've had this sensation of like, sensation I described before of like, feeling kind of like lightheaded and having a hard time focusing. And I kind of like see spots in my vision. It's been like that ever since then. And, it stopped having an effect maybe around like 5 o'clock yesterday, something like that, 5 p.m. And since then, I've been experiencing this state. And it's now around 10 a.m. the following day. So it's like, I have no idea why it hit me this hard, why it's still affecting me. But it's just like, man, I did not like that. This is horrible. And the bad thing about it, which arguably is technically good news, is the fact that it actually did help boost my appetite. Which is bad news because it's like, oh, well, if it didn't work and I had really intense effects and I did not like it, cool, I never need to do it again. Unfortunately, it did boost my appetite. It did seem to help on that front. So now I'm faced with the problem of, crap, what do I do? Do I try taking it again because I know it's going to help for the appetite? Or do I decide, you know what, it's not worth it? So I don't know at the moment. Today I can't take one even if I wanted to. I definitely don't. But even if I wanted to, I can't because my friend's coming over to pick me up. We're going to go do some groceries. And then tomorrow I have a scan at the hospital. So can't take one tomorrow either. So I'm going to take a couple days to kind of like figure this out and decide what I want to do. What I'm thinking is like, okay, maybe if I take like half of one or a quarter of one next time and make sure that I take it on a full stomach, then I'll kind of be able to see, first of all, if it hits me as hard, and second of all, if it still has that same effect of boosting the appetite. So I don't want to give up because it does seem to help, but I'm just like, I cannot go through that every day. If I need to take some every day in order to have the necessary appetite to eat more and start gaining weight and everything, like I cannot handle going through that shit for 3 hours and then feeling like I've been feeling ever since then every single day. It's just like, it's too much. I cannot do that. So I'll have to like test just to see if there's kind of a middle ground that I can find where I get the benefits without too much of the effects. But yeah, this was definitely not what I was expecting, and it was just horrible. I don't know why it hit me that way, but yeah, this is not what people describe when they describe what it was like to be high. So glad I tried it, glad I broke that internal barrier, but yeah, I really don't know what I'm gonna do at this point. So we'll see. So anyway, that was my story of me getting high. It sucked. Anyway, talk to you in the next video.